Hi, my name is Prem Johal. I'm an ex-banker from the City of London, and I used to advise multi-million-dollar portfolios on how to invest their money. And guess what? I discovered that the system is rigged. It favors those who already have money, and the rest of us just keep chasing pieces of paper for a slightly better lifestyle. And you know what? The system is actually almost on the verge of another collapse. Now I encourage you to go out there and find a solution for yourself. And what I've also found is that when people have done their research independently, they always come back to the solution that I have to offer to you.
Long lines formed at the ATM machine.
The fact is that the confiscations in Cyprus were not a one-time event. The eventuality for this had already been planned in advance, and there are plans in place for confiscations of depositor accounts in New Zealand, the European Union, Canada, England, and the United States.
What most people don't understand is that once you give a bank your money, the money is legally no longer yours. Under the law, depositors are considered unsecured creditors to the bank and are treated as such under any bankruptcy.
If you think that the FDIC will still come riding to the rescue, consider these facts. The FDIC has approximately $25 billion in its fund to cover losses. The total deposits in U.S. banks totals $9,283 billion. The U.S. banks' derivatives total is $297,514 billion.
Looking at the FDIC Bank of England joint paper summary, the text clearly says that in the U.S., they will use the powers granted under the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act, and losses will be assigned to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Remember that as a depositor in a bank, under the law, you are an unsecured creditor.
We are entering a period of financial crisis that is the greatest the world has ever known. The wealth transfer that will take place during this decade is the greatest wealth transfer in history. Wealth is never destroyed, it is merely transferred, and that means that on the opposite side of every crisis there is an opportunity.
And so when Jacob Rothschild says that he is buying gold because the central banks are out of control, you have to laugh. He and his family have been in control of the world's central banks for centuries. But he said it nonetheless. In his semi-annual address to shareholders of RIT Capital Partners, Jacob Rothschild announced that they are reducing stock market and currency exposure and increasing their gold holdings, and warns that the world is now in uncharted waters and that the consequences are impossible to predict. He stated, "The 6 months under review have seen central bankers continuing what is surely the greatest experiment in monetary policy in the history of the world. We are therefore in uncharted waters, and it is impossible to predict the unintended consequences of very low interest rates, with some 30% of global government debt at negative yields, combined with quantitative easing on a massive scale. It's not impossible to predict. There's going to be a gigantic crash." That's what Rothschild is telling us, and what our analysis of Shemitah and now Jubilee 2016 revealed to us. Financial disasters track these timelines, and Rothschild knows all about it. He's the best man to predict what is going to happen because he and other globalist elites have created the timeline of catastrophe that we regularly analyze and predict. And he's being clear that this timeline of catastrophe is moving ahead. For observers like us and you, he is stating the obvious, and others are making it clear as well. With just a month and a half until the end of the Jubilee year, very connected billionaires are warning that things are going horribly wrong. It's no coincidence. George Soros began to move heavily into gold a few months ago, and so did his buddy Crispin Odey. And now Jacob Rothschild himself is moving into gold. We're certain they already own tremendous sums of it, but he is buying even more now in the final days of Jubilee 2016. Rothschild and the others want us to believe they are concerned about this state of affairs. He's pretending he's making his move because he is worried. He's not worried. He knows what is going to happen.
In 1971, the U.S. and Nixon convinced the entire world to replace gold and silver with paper money. This stuff. Cash is trash. So the reason we have so much volatility in the world today is historically, since the time of the Romans and the Greeks and the French and the English and the Germans, every time they have taken God's money, like silver here, and replaced it with man-made money, there's been economic volatility. Now the problem is, so the dollar is going to keep dropping. So one of the reasons I can predict what's going to happen is I can predict the dollar will keep dropping simply because the U.S. government and now the euro, the European central banks, are printing so much of this trash.
That's why I wrote this book. I wrote this book because I wanted to protect people because a crash is coming. Now, whether it's 6 months from now, 12 months, 36 months, no one knows. Warren Buffett said, if you listen to market forecasters, their only purpose is to make, people that tell fortunes look
and
good.
Things like it is the equivalent of the red pill. Okay? We are entering a completely world of uncharted water right now.
Have you made any investments in Bitcoin?
So, I personally, I own Bitcoin in my hedge fund. I own Bitcoin in my fund. I own Bitcoin in my private account. It is a huge deal. It's a huge, huge, huge deal. Because what you're talking about right now is for the next 3 to 5 years, an unbelievably better store value. It is gold 2.0.
I think this is a currency that's really going to work eventually.
Well, I think it is working, and there will be other currencies like it that may be even better. But in the meantime, there's a big industry around Bitcoin, and people have made fortunes out of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, there is no Bitcoin company, there is no Bitcoin building, there's not even a Bitcoin server anywhere that you could shut down. It is completely distributed. That's what's unique about Bitcoin. It is, for the first time, a way for the two of us to exchange value online without a third-party intermediary. Until the invention of Bitcoin, for you and me to exchange money online, we had to employ a third party, like PayPal, like Visa, like MasterCard, right? And we live in the 21st century. If we want to have a video call to China, we can do that for free. But to send a couple $100, which is essentially just ones and zeros being moved around, costs 5% plus takes over a day.
Bitcoin is exciting because it shows how cheap it can be. Bitcoin is better than currency in that you don't have to be physically in the same place, and of course for large transactions currency can get pretty inconvenient.
You'll see Bitcoin trading at 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Rick Falkvinia does an excellent analysis. He predicts that Bitcoin will capture between 1 and 10% of the global Forex market, which implies a price of between $100,000 to $1 million per Bitcoin. Most of the people who are on the sidelines not buying Bitcoin today will start to buy Bitcoin when it gets over 1,000, and then a greater percentage of people will definitely plow into Bitcoin when it starts to get over 10,000.
It's still predicting Bitcoin $10,000 per Bitcoin in 3 years.